Welcome to Matters of the Soul. My name is Erich Schoeman. It is lovely to have you here. Today we are talking about step families and how to make it work. And I'm privileged to have Elsje Du Plessis Basson from Remind Coaching with me in the studio. Here she's via Zoom, so you can see we're recording a Zoom. Elsje, welcome.
Erich, thank you so much for inviting me to this session. Thank you for the privilege, and I look forward to sharing my story with you guys.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Elsje. Yes, that's what she's going to do. She's going to share her personal experience of what she's been through with a step family and how they have made it work, and the ups and downs and the steps to make a step family work. Elsje, as we're going to discuss your personal story, I appreciate you being willing to share that because I think there are a lot of families out there that might be struggling with a step family and how to make it work. And now that you've gone through the whole process, I'm so glad that we can hear from you what has made the difference for you. So if you start with your story, tell us where it all started. Maybe years before the step family started. What happened in your life?
Okay, Erich, so I'll spare you the gory details of the previous marriage. Mm-hmm. What I can tell you is I got born again and on 16 May 2008, and 5 days after I got born again, my husband decided that there was greener pasture somewhere else, so he jumped the fence. Our daughter was about six months old at that stage. So for me, it was it was hard. It was not the marriage that I planned. It was not the dream that I had for us as a family. And obviously this marriage ended then up in divorce. I then focused on my religion and my relationship with God and my daughter for the next 10 years. And I prayed and trusted God for a new life partner.
Yeah.
And so in 2016, I met my husband, and we got on very well. There's certain things I asked and trusted God for, that I asked God that we should also have kids so we can understand from a parent's perspective what it's about. And
I just first want to ask you there, so there was a long period between the first marriage and the second one.
Yes.
It was a 10-year period, you say?
That's correct, yes.
And what led to you not going into another marriage quickly? Was it fear, or was it being cautious, or what was happening there?
Erich, to be honest, I think God protected me because he knew how broken I was from that first marriage. And in that sense, he was also protecting my daughter. In that time, I showed my daughter how you trust God, you pray for a new partner, and you wait. You don't settle for less. So one of the first things I learned from the failed marriage is that I needed to raise my standards. Yeah. Whatever you accept and tolerate, that's your life that you will have in the end. So I focused during that time on my daughter, on my relationship with God, and in that time, I also had to deal with a lot of things. I had to deal with the rejection from the marriage. I had to deal with the heartache. And I knew I couldn't go into another relationship while I was still broken.
Yeah. So you had the wisdom to not go into the relationship too quickly. You waited and you allowed the Lord to heal your heart from the hurts and pain from the first marriage. Because I think that is very valuable, because I've seen many a times as a clinical psychologist in my own practice that, and research also shows it clearly, that if you just go into another relationship without really properly healing or allowing yourself to go through a healing process where you identify the things from the first marriage that has really hurt you and that could potentially spill over into the next relationship. I mean, that could be a stumbling block a bit later on. But I can hear what you've done is you've really given time as well for your own healing. And that's very critical, isn't it? I mean, a 10-year time period seems very long, but I think it sounds like there was enough time to process the pain from the first relationship.
Erich, you're absolutely right. So, and to be honest, you know what? In that 10 years that I was by myself and focusing on my daughter, I had my walls up. So, and a lot of things I worked through. But God is so gracious. A lot of the triggers or the situations or the emotions that I never dealt with, I wasn't confronted with them as long as I was single. But the moment I met my soon-to-be husband, we were together 6 months. And what I did, I had these expectations of how I had to now buy his love or achieve, do, for example, achieve his love or affection. And some of the lessons, Erich, to be honest, God only taught me after I met him. Because I remember we were together 6 months, and then there were some triggers, and I immediately knew, okay, most of the things I've dealt with, but there was a few things that I haven't dealt with. And I immediately reached out to our church and said, okay, there's these two things that I see constantly coming back up. I need to deal with that. So, and that's the first step, to be aware of what are the things that I hadn't dealt with while I was single. Because I knew I couldn't walk with these things into a marriage without dealing with them and knowing where they came from and how to manage them.
I think that's critical. In my preparation for the talk on step families and how to make it work, I've also come across a lot of research that shows how important it is to have that awareness, because the awareness helps you to, when you're in the new situation, to act differently. So I can hear that you've spent that time, and then you say you were in the relationship for 6 months. You sought outside help from your church, which is also important. You didn't try and go it alone and just do it on your own. You went and sought for help. And and what happened from there?
Well, I think what happened is that I spent a lot of time. I got to know my husband. He's got 2 children. I have my daughter, and we spent a lot of time together. Initially, I then had my walls up. When he invited me to a work function, we went as friends. I never expected anything to happen or didn't see this as my potential husband. So I think as time went on, I slowly let the walls down. And he constantly treated me with so much respect, so much kindness. The kids got on well. And we focused a lot of time spending, getting to know each other. And that was my focus, is just enjoying the time with this person, getting to know him. And then also to see if we have the same interests. Also look out for if there was warning signs, if the things that was coming up that maybe would say, okay, be careful, or this is not somebody for you. So I was very cautious, I must say.
And I can hear that, again, you took it slowly. You gave it enough time. Yet there was, with all of that, I'll look at it a bit later. What you did is you spent enough time to really get to know one another, especially it seems the children. So your husband also has children from his first marriage.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay,
he's got 2 children.
And you've got a daughter.
That's correct.
Okay, so you spent enough time so that the families could, in a sense, warm up to each other and get to know each other, spending time together, and then you as a couple alone.
That's correct. We spend most of our time alone because of the kids moving between the homes. So a lot of our alone time was done when the kids were at the other parents' homes. And this was really somebody that I enjoyed being with. The kids, you know what, you get to know them. But I must be honest, you never build that relationship with the kids before the marriage, because to be honest, I can say you kind of tolerate them. You kind, you say, hello, how's it going? How's your day been? But you never really get to know their personality, what makes them happy, what makes them sad. Because you're in this to get to know the person, the parents in this case. And then obviously we were together from 2016. And in February 2019, my husband soon to be, then asked me to marry him. And in June 2019, we got married. And again, I think in today's society, a lot of people tend to stay together before they get married. We said, no, we're going to honor our marriage. We're going to do it right. We wanted to show the kids also, this is the right way to do it. So obviously, I stayed in my own home. I had my own security, my own space, my happy place, as I called it. So then we got married, and now I had to move from my house, my sense of security, my safe place. I had to move into my husband's home, a home that he chose with his 2 kids. And I must tell you, within the first 2 months after our marriage, Erich, I wanted to run away. I wanted to get a divorce again. And there's one of the authors, Ron Deal, that talks about the smart stepfamilies. And it's got such a nice way of saying it. It said, from the moment you meet your partner, we call it you were in Egypt, it's your single life. Now you meet your partner. Now you're heading to the promised land. And our promised land was a reconstituted or the step family.
Yes.
And from the journey, from the moment we went from Egypt to the promised land and we got married, it was my rude awakening. Sure. I wasn't prepared. There was a lot of things we did not consider, especially the children. And I wanted to flee back to Egypt. I wanted to get a divorce. And it was so hard to confess this and be honest and tell people, you know what, I've been married 2 months, but I want to run away. When the kids came on a weekend, it felt like there was no place in the home where I could say, this is my space, my safe place. I felt like I didn't belong. And those initial 2 months, 6 months, it was hard. It was hard on everyone. My husband, because there was a lot of tension between, especially myself and the stepchildren. And it was because I had, to be honest, unrealistic expectations.
Okay.
I had my own idea of we're going to be one big happy family. So first, we both were married before. We know what effort goes into marriage, and we know what didn't work, and we knew now what to do. But in the first marriage, the marriage itself between the husband and the wife is the strongest link. But in a second marriage, the marriage itself is the weakest link because the children precedes the wedding. And obviously I learned this the hard way, but the more intense the conflict got, the thicker the blood between the biological parent and the child. So, and the moment I confronted my husband with something that, for example, one of the kids did, it was natural for him as a parent to stand up and try and protect his kids. And that caused a lot of more tension in the home. My poor husband felt that he had to choose between his wife, that he waited for such a long time, and his kids that he spent also 10 years together with. Yes. And obviously, after the tires and the wheels came off and we hit rock bottom, and I realized, you know what, there's certain things we were not prepared for. The first marriage, or should I say a step family, experienced every single challenge that a biological family experienced. But on top of that, they've got additional challenges. For example, step-sibling rivalry. The fact that the children did not necessarily choose me. They were really happy with the life with their dad and the routine and the new tradition they had built in over the past 10 years. The children experienced a lot of loss in this new marriage. And we only realized this afterwards when my own daughter said, Mommy, I can't just come into your room anymore. I now need to knock. And those were hard realities we had to face.
Yes.
And yeah.
So the first couple of months brought about a lot of unexpected changes and challenges for all of you involved. And it sounds like it really came as a shock, so much so that you wanted to exit after 2 months. It must have been extremely emotional and quite intense shock then, experiencing all these dynamics and changes that happen very rapidly. I know the research shows a whole host of changes, that such a family face additionally to what other families do not face. And then I can hear that there was a division between yourself, your husband and his children, and then it becomes us and them.
Yeah.
And that causes conflict in the marriage again. So it sounds like it was hard because it's all of the people involved are very sensitive about the relationships, isn't it, with your own children? And it was. How did you manage to deal with that, especially with your husband and his children? What happened there? How did that change?
So we went into this marriage, and I had my dreams of how it's going to be. But the stepkids and even my own daughter, she had her own dreams of how a new daddy would treat her. But now there's no relationship between the step parent and the children.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of silly things. For example, the kids would come on a weekend to come and visit their dad, and that's where the relationship is. So they would walk into the kitchen and start talking to their dad about things. And I would stand there and I felt like the outsider. Or I might be coming into the room and then suddenly they stop talking. And a lot of times I took that so personal. And that caused a lot of resentment. It caused, I think, my non-verbal communication showed it. And I felt rejected. So, I think our lowest point was, to be honest, it was the point where my stepson said, but I'm the bad person. I took his best friend away from him.
Sure.
And I had to see it from his point of view.
Yeah.
He lost his best friend. For 10 years, he and his dad were so close. They played golf together. They did everything together. And now there's somebody that steps in and he feels that he's been pushed aside. Now remember, he's already gone through the initial divorce. He was, for example, let's say 6 years old. He never had the emotional maturity to deal with that initial divorce. Now he's got his time between his mom and dad divided as well. And now, for a third time, the routine is getting mixed up again because now there's a new person coming into the house. With me came new traditions, new disciplines, new ways I wanted things to take place in the home. And they were not happy with that. But I can understand it today. But being in that situation and not having the tools and the skills, Erich, I made so many stupid mistakes. You know what? I came from a childhood where I wasn't planned. There was a childhood of abandonment or rejection. And my biggest value was the sense of belonging. So for me, I wanted everyone in the home to feel loved and wanted them to feel like they belong. So for me, I tried to bring everyone together. And the more I did that, the more I got pushed back. Okay. But until I got to a point where I realized, but this is not about me. It's the position that I've taken in. And I had to get
That's
to a point where I had to realize and admit that I've...
you had to come to a point where
Yes, and I had to get to the...
Yes, now let me comment on that.
Sorry.
It's where you distinguished between the role that you assumed and your personal, your own person. You realized it was the role that and the roles that the children have now been placed in as stepchildren, losing a relationship with their father they didn't lose the whole of the relationship, but the relationship was changed, redefined to a new one, including a stepmother. And that causes all kinds of changes that I can hear that they communicated their loss. And then you putting yourself in their shoes enabled you to distinguish between yourself and the role that you were playing. So I can hear that you understanding or showing empathy actually made a huge difference. But initially it struck you as rejection, or you felt like the outsider.
Yes,
so you weren't
definitely
included in that little circle. It's like circles within circles. it's difficult for the circle to merge as one circle. So it seems like from your own perspective, you tried very hard to bring closeness, but initially it was a bit forced, if I may say so.
That's you definitely, Erich. And that was only once I started reading and reaching out and getting literature to understand that how long does it take for a step family to start functioning normal, as they say. And only after I realized that, and I read, it's 5 to 7 years. And I tried to make it work within 2 months. No wonder the wheels came off. No wonder.
But that's us humans, isn't it? We plant a tree and we want the tree to be a huge tree tomorrow,
Yes.
It's like that's what we do. We go to the gym once and then we must lose 20 kilograms.
Yes.
It's crazy.
That's correct. And you know what, Erich? I think the hardest point is still today is walking with the heartache that we cause when we are not equipped. And it was so unnecessary. If we had the skills before we got married, how to handle the stepchildren, who's responsible for the discipline, who brings the fun, what is the role of the step-parents, how do I announce my stepdaughter? Do I tell my people this is my daughter, or do I say this is my stepdaughter? All those small little things. And the small things like traditions and routines. And if we knew that, if we had those skills before we got married, I think we definitely would have saved ourselves and our kids so much heartache and so much stress and pain. And I think that's where my passion for this actually got birth.
Oh, and what you're pointing to is the things that we sometimes underestimate, the smaller things that actually have a huge effect. The way we introduce them, the way we talk about them, that's very significant. And you say another thing that I think that's our aim with this video today and with my channel, Matters of the Soul. The aim is to educate and empower people through great psychological and knowledge on a Christian basis. And I mean, that's what you said you didn't have. And then when you started seeking it out, that's where you got perspective. So it just goes to show how important it is to really to educate yourself before we embark on something as huge as making a step family work. Because it's, I think of being a neurosurgeon. You spend about 12, 14 years in training, and you cannot just be a neurosurgeon with a 2 months training or by reading 3 books. It just doesn't happen. So it's ironic that we sometimes forget that relationships are as complex, and that we do need to set ourselves up in the best possible way so that we don't. But now I think this is valuable because our mistakes become other people's opportunities to grow and learn as well, isn't it? Because it's now made an opportunity for you to actually share it, so that hopefully others won't pay the biggest price. But it sounds like when you got perspective, then you were able to take a few steps back and see it from a distance and see it for what it was and lower your expectation to become more realistic, isn't it? And what did that do? Did that place less pressure on yourself and the others, or how did that work out with you? How did it change your way of thinking?
So obviously I had to first admit that the way I was doing this, and the Lord spoke to me so kindly in October that first year, where he said, do you see the way you've been approaching this? Obviously it hasn't been working because there was all this tension in the home. And the Lord challenged me to change my perspective or the approach that I was using. So initially, whenever there was an issue with one of the kids, also my own daughter, I used to confront my husband, and that used to cause tension between us, and then that caused a division inside the home. So by that October, I started taking everything to the Lord. What I did, and I had to admit first, I had unrealistic expectations. I had to admit that I thought that my husband would choose me above all else. I had the idea that my husband would protect me. He would always have my back. He would always make me feel loved. And that is unrealistic. It is unrealistic because life happens. And so from that October, what I did, when something happened with, for example, he came home from work and he wasn't in a happy mood, instead of confronting him to say what is going on, that I do something wrong, instead of taking it personal, I took it to the Lord. I said, Lord, thank you that you are always excited to see me. Thank you that you never get upset or take it out on me. That I just changed my perspective, and that took off so much pressure because God is the perfect husband. So I just went to him. I took everything to him. And when my stepchild didn't say or didn't treat me in a way that I, for example, expected or assumed he would treat me, and I felt rejected, I immediately said, Lord, thank you that you never protect me. Lord, you know my heart. I got to a place where I stopped fighting and confronting my husband. If something happened with the kids, I took everything to my inner room. I said, Lord, if my heart is wrong, teach me. But Lord, if this situation that's happening now, if it's not right, let your light shine on it and let righteousness come to light. And every time, God is faithful. If something wasn't right, God brought it to light. And I never had to fight again. I never had to felt like I had to go up against my husband. I never felt like the outsider again, because I had the King of Kings who was fighting my battles for me. And so many times I got to the point where I said,
so you experienced the Lord's work
continue?
In your life. You experienced him. I can hear that you, when you went to him, it was a relief for you, and you could just talk to the Lord and understand, experience his love and his understanding. How did that change the way?
That's correct, Erich.
Yeah. How did it change the way how did that change the way you viewed your husband and worked with your husband?
Well, first of all, I think it took a lot of the pressure off my husband, that he felt that he had to act in a certain way to keep the peace in the home. And it gave me a lot of more grace for my husband and also for the kids. So through this, I think God has really humbled me, and he made me aware of the other people's brokenness and their longing and their own heartache. Because remember, we all come into this new step family with past hurts and past experiences. And we all you try to protect yourself. So for me personally, I stopped fighting with my husband. And till this day, I can't go back. I can't undo what I've done. But and therefore I always tell people, let my mistakes be your stepping stones.
How do you
shouldn't ever be in a place where you...
How do you approach your husband now? Something that bothers you.
Well, what I learned is, obviously, when there is critical conversations to have with my husband, there's a few questions that I ask myself. I ask myself, is this conversation really critical that I cannot leave this? Okay. If I want to have this conversation with my husband, what is the intention of my heart? What is the outcome that I want? Okay. And then once I've established that, and I know, okay, it's a critical conversation, I really need to have this with him, and this is the intention of my heart and the outcome that I want, then I will first of all start to discuss with my husband to say, this is his part, this is how I appreciate him and the significant role that he plays in my life and in our kids' life. And then I will for example, address the situation. I will use I statements. I will not attack and say you. And then what I will do is, in the end, say, this is the situation. This is how I see it taking place right now. And then I will ask him, what do you suggest we do to resolve this?
Sounds very good. I can hear you've done some work on how you actually communicate your needs when you are, and your frustrations and feelings. And that's so critical, like you're referring to, first of all, distinguishing and asking yourself whether this is really necessary and is it a critical conversation or not. Because it can just be that one starts to, you feel upset about something and then you just want to talk about it with everybody, just talk. And when we spend time working on our communication, because I've seen you've done that, I can see that you are aware of how you convey your message. And that's very important. You mentioned I statements. And, I've seen that in my practice as well, as communication, the way we treat each other. And that's also a book that I'm writing. It's in the how. Mastering the art of interacting with people. It's in the how. So how you communicate actually lowers the chance of your partner becoming defensive and aggressive if you really do it from your side and you're just sharing your heart. Okay, so you didn't just dump conversations on him day and night. You chose very carefully whether this was really necessary and critical, and then you made an effort to communicate in such a way that it was more, we say, explanatory and personal than an attack and a blame. No, that's great.
Yes.
My psychological ears, that is music. That's great. And
Erich, you know what? I always joke, and you get to know your partner, and you get to a point where I realize that some critical conversations I had to have with my husband while he's driving, because then he was focused on the road and it wasn't that so intense for him, and that he wouldn't feel so attacked. So you have to get to know your partner. Does your partner prefer writing or reading what the issue is, or does he prefer a conversation? For example, I process while talking. Then I work through things. My husband processes by himself. So for him, he needs 2 days of things, sometimes even more, to process, especially if it was a huge argument or a disagreement we had. Yeah. I had to learn when to engage in that conversation or in that argument and when to step back. And that was also one of the critical skills that I needed to learn.
Absolutely. And I love the way you say you study your partner and you get to know them and you adjust, you adapt yourself so that you can make it easier for them. And I think that's a way of loving them. So from what I hear is that you initially went into the situation quite blind, obviously with good intentions, but then being absolutely disillusioned after the first few months of, wow, I feel like an outsider. I feel rejected. I feel frustrated at my husband. We have lots more conflict about these things. It seems like it's dividing us and them kinds of scenario. So there wasn't the unity. And then you started going to the Lord and spilling your heart out in front of him. And he changed your attitude to also become more understanding and compassionate towards their points of view. And then from there, it seems like you were selective as to what you would talk about and when and where. So you were very decisive and controlled. It wasn't just an impulsive, emotional situation where you let your emotions do the talking. You thought about this. In coaching and in psychology, we talk about responding, not reacting. So, that's very beautiful. Because that does make a huge difference, because it's not just an unexpected bomb that you drop on your husband. What else made a difference for you, or that you see initially that caused a problem and that you changed? Was there something like finances that also caused a problem for you guys? Because you mentioned, let me hook on to that. You mentioned his home. You went to live in his home, and it didn't feel like your home. What happened there?
So, Erich, that was, again, it's a value. And if we understand a person's value system, for me, I place a lot of value on security, okay? But security for my husband is in finance. He sees security in finances. For me, security is having a home where I feel I belong. So especially in a home that you move into that you didn't choose, you feel like your ground is now rattled. You don't feel secure because if something goes wrong tomorrow, where do I go? And especially in those first few months when I felt like I wanted to get a divorce, I couldn't move back into my own home because I was renting it out. So it's that insecurity. So that actually caused insecurity within me. But then I realized that we have to work through this. We have to. We both value security, right? We both value it. We value it. I place security value in sense of belonging. And for my husband, it's giving us a home and providing for us. So I also had to change my perspective on that. And you asked earlier, what was one of the other things? Finances wasn't a big thing for us. My husband and I spoke about that before we got married. We always joke and we say we were both very successful single. we didn't need to get married. We could sustain ourselves and look after ourselves. So finance was not an issue. But I think one of the things that I initially did so wrong, and I spoke about it earlier, was pressuring the relationship between myself and the stepkids. So I had to then, and obviously again, by getting the knowledge and reading the books, I realized that I was putting unnecessary pressure on my stepkids. And I then read that the relationship between a step-parent and a stepchild, that the relationship develops at the time or the pace of the child, not the parent or the step-parent. And the moment I realized that, I could also let that expectation go that my kids will love me and they will accept me within 2 months. I then paid very careful attention when they came into the home. If today they would give me a hug, tomorrow they might come and they wouldn't give me a hug. I wouldn't go then and force it on them. I then had to say, okay, stop. What probably happened in their life today or in their day that made them feel a little bit more vulnerable? And I gave them their space. And I think that took a lot of pressure off. One of the other things, Erich, that I did wrong initially is I had this expectation that I waited 10 years for my partner. I wanted to spend every single minute with him because remember, we don't have another 40 or 60 years. We just met each other now. So for me, it was again also that fighting for undivided attention. Even though the children had, but they were now losing the undivided attention with their dad, I felt that I had to fight for that because every second weekend when the kids came over, I felt like a nothing. I didn't matter. But that wasn't reality. That was just the way I perceived it. And the moment I let go of that expectation of wanting my husband's undivided attention, it took pressure off him and it took pressure off me and it took pressure off everyone else in the home.
Yes.
And Erich, I think our lowest point was obviously after we got married, we went on our first family holiday for December. So again, we have to take into consideration here our past, our background, personality styles. My daughter and myself, we like to explore. Every time we went on holiday, we went to different places and went to explore. My husband and his kids, for 10 years when he was single, every year they drove down to the same place, stayed in the same home, went to the same beach and did the same thing. Because that for the kids, remember, the more change, the more loss they experience. So for them, that routine gave them a sense of safety and security. So now we were married 6 months and off we go on our first December holiday. And the tension was just, you could cut it with a knife. And the one morning I asked my stepson to pass me something on the table. And the way he passed it was not very polite. And again, it hit me because I had my own expectation of how our first holiday would be. And so did they, because they've been having this holiday at this same place for 10 years. And again, that tension that morning at the breakfast table was so hard. And I had to excuse myself. I went to the bathroom and again, I cried. And I said, Lord, this is not what I want. This is not what a holiday should be like. All this tension and you're walking on eggshells the whole time. And I stood
like your
in the
dream
shower and I cried and I said, Lord, if my heart... Yes.
Yeah, it was shattered, eh?
And
you say you were crying?
It was. My dream was shattered.
And you were pouring your heart out to the Lord.
Yeah.
You were saying that you went to the Lord. You excused yourself from the table and you went to the Lord.
Yeah, I always joke now and I say, shower is my safe space now, because that's where you can cry as a lady and nobody can see the tears running. So got into the shower, I cried, I felt better. And again, I took everything to the Lord. I spoke to him. And the moment I spoke to him, that's what the scripture says, peace that surpasses all understanding. The peace filled me. And again, when I walked out, I said, Lord, please, if this that's happened now, if it's not right, bring it to light. My husband came into the shower and said, what's going on? I said, nothing. Nothing's wrong. He said, but you didn't finish your breakfast. I said, nothing's wrong. I just actually want to get a shower. Till today, I never discussed that incident that morning at the table with my husband because I didn't need to. That moment when I got out of the shower, my husband was talking to my stepson. And only months afterwards, came out during some conversation, it came out that my stepdaughter told her dad what happened at the table because my husband didn't see it. And my husband, when he spoke to my stepson, he said, but Dad, even our holiday is now not.
It seems like they were struggling with change fatigue. I'm thinking of that because
I then understood, because remember, this is the last thing that felt like a routine for the kids. So now, even in the holiday time when it's supposed to be relaxing, there was more change coming, because now in the home, I wanted us to do things together. I wanted us to go and explore, and they were happy to just staying in the house and watching TV. They didn't want to go to the beach every day and lie on the beach for 4 hours. And that brought, again, pressure. But because by that December, I had the knowledge, I had all the skills, I started reading. And a lot of times I had to step back and say, okay, but this is not about me. This is the way my stepson experienced this. It's more loss. And with loss comes pain. And I think that's one of the biggest things we as step-parents miss in our stepchildren is they come across as angry, but that angry sadness, that madness is actually sadness. Yeah. So because the more change, the more sadness and the more loss they experience.
Must have been difficult for you because you've got your own needs and your own feelings and you want to also be happy. But I can hear what you've done is, and what's happened is when you went to the Lord, it's as if it got you to think outside of just yourself and your own needs, and
yes.
and your own needs are valid and your own feelings are valid. The Lord didn't rebuff them and negate or dismiss them. It's just that you were able to see the bigger picture. You could take a few steps back and say, okay, what was really going on there? Not just to fight for my own rights, but to act in a way that would bring about peace in the whole of the family. And that was by not attacking and blaming or putting pressure on your husband to now discipline the son because he is rejecting you. Now, obviously, in some situations, you do need to stand up and say and speak up. But this does sound like an attitude of prayerfully considering what to do, because that sounds wise. Whereas if you're in a situation where you're just acting upon your frustration, and it wasn't that your frustration wasn't valid, it was valid. There was impoliteness, or there was a violation of some kind, but it was just how you handled the situation, took into account your husband's feelings, the children's feelings, and you did that by following the Lord. It's a beautiful integration of how your relationship with the Lord led you and helped you here, and to act outside of just your own frame of reference is what we would call it. And how have things been going from there? Where did the turnaround or the change then come for you guys?
I think that the change came that January when our stepson decided that he won't come to our house every second weekend again. Immediately the pressure was off that I didn't have to walk on eggshells to now wait in the morning for the personality that's coming out of the room. Or will I get a hello or good morning? So that pressure was off. And again, then what we did, we had to put things in place for my husband to still spend that quality time with his kids.
Yes.
Because the undivided quality time is very important, no matter how old the kids are. So we then said every Thursday night, my husband went for supper with his kids alone by himself. And then what we also did then on a weekend, for example, my husband would go play golf with his son. And then, for example, last Sunday, I told my husband, go shopping with your daughter. So we managed, and I had to also consider my husband. Erich, I had to be honest to say, if I was going to keep on going the way I was and fighting for my rights, nothing would be left. We would have destroyed 3 kids, again, a second marriage. So people, you can make a choice if you want to continue your fighting for what you believe is right, or do you want to be happy? And by stepping back and by changing our perspectives and still giving my husband quality time with his kids, and allowing my husband and his kids last year, December, they went on their own holiday. And I must tell you, we had such a blast. I went for a week with my daughter. She had her mom's undivided attention for 7 days. And my husband's kids had it with him. Now we're at a place where we celebrated my stepdaughter's 16th birthday. And we're at a place now where we went to the party. We could sit at a table with my husband and his ex-wife and her new husband. And there's no more tension. I can feel by the way my stepson greets me today, there's no more pressure. But I know today, and I knew that October, I had to get to a point where I would surrender myself and my plans and my own intentions. I remember that October when the kids came that weekend. They spent the weekend here, and I told my husband, I'm going to stay somewhere else. And I booked into a guest lodge, and that whole weekend I prayed and I fasted. And the Lord, the first scripture He told me is, do not speak, do not open up your mouth. Just be calm, be the servant, keep quiet. I will fight for you. And like I said, since I started doing that, everything has changed. I'm grateful today. I'm so grateful. And we're at a point now where I could tell my stepson the other day, I said, you know what, son, I really stuffed up at being a stepmom initially. And we had a good laugh about it. But my heart is to save anybody else the tears and the heartache that we caused everyone. And I think it was so unnecessary. If we had the skills, like I said, and we knew about the materials before the time, it would have made such a huge difference in our lives and in our kids' lives.
And I think that's and I want to comment on what you're busy with at the moment with Remind coaching and working with step families. But before I go there, I just want to comment on something you said that I think is very important, and it's reflected in the research, where you're acknowledging the fact that this is a reconstituted or a co-joined family, meaning it's a combination of a few families coming together, and it's not just you and your daughter and him and his children, because you have the exes that are also the extended part of this family, because you have to take them into account as well. And by giving the time slots, the time for the children to bond with their children, with their parents, and even with the ex-parents, the exes as parents, it is important because that keeps all the relationships going, and it gives security even for you, because the research does point out that in the marriage, it's important to have fixed dates, and it's important to have fixed dates with your children and separately as well. And then to have certain rituals that you as a family create together, not forced or overwhelmingly, but every now and then, like eating together, a meal as a co-joint family, eating a meal a few times a week, having some time together with fun, and having some serious time, like or whatever, discussions, and a few rituals that also create that new consistency, but not taking away or amplifying their loss by now creating more distance from their own parents or the other family. And I think what happened is you let go of a lot of your unrealistic expectations and trusted the Lord and went with the process and didn't fight for your needs. You served, which sometimes seems contraindicated because now you're serving and you're loving, but it seems like you're on the shortest end of this deal. But what you're doing is you're turning the other cheek, and by doing that, you're allowing the Lord to work in their hearts. And as we know, Corinthians also says that love conquers all, and love is extremely strong. So love also does then mean to not force the child to have a relationship with you, but to slowly but surely build your own unique connection with them, and to allow them to have alone time with their parents. Because and here listening to you, I can hear that you've gained, and it's become a bit more natural. It's not forced, and in doing that, you've acknowledged what it is and have allowed them to have some of their own past rituals and holidays, but also then creating some new. So it's not at the expense of something. You're not taking away an old experience and then putting in a new one. So I think that's a nice win-win. It meets each other in the middle, because this is a new relationship. And you know what's very interesting for me, that the research shows that if step families really work at this and they get the knowledge and they educate themselves, and they, especially the parents, and they work at this, they can form very strong bonds over time. So it can really become a unique, because they've got more challenges, those challenges can actually lead to strong relationships, because now you gain more family members. So in the end, that you actually feel that this family is very strong. And one thing that they also show is that the marriage is so important, the relationship between you and your husband, but again, not at the expense of. But the relationship is very strong. The relationship between the two of you actually also, in the end, that love also spills over to all of the children, because it does offer some security. But that's great. And tell me, with your Remind coaching now and your heart, because I can hear this is a passion of yours, and you're touched by, and you really want to help other parents with or people who are considering getting married again. What are you planning on doing? Because we're having this, and we might have a few more discussions about step families. Are you doing anything else, like workshops or any of those things, or coaching?
Okay. Erich, yes, I do workshops for step families or soon to be step families, as well as one-on-one coaching or online coaching. And I always also help people that's already gone through a divorce to prepare them for the next journey, and to help them prepare the kids for the next journey ahead, and to prepare the kids and asking the right questions. So I do focus a lot. My passion is with step families, because that's bringing change in our second and our third generation, showing our kids that love can conquer all, and you can take another chance, and love does survive, and you can trust somebody again, especially after a heartache. So I do focus on a lot of single parents, step families, divorced parents, to equip them, also work through the turmoil of after divorce and a heartache after divorce, and is again putting the boundaries in place for the next relationships, what to look out for. And then for the step families, a lot of workshops around first, there's a few things that I cover. It's first the unrealistic expectations, the how the children experience the step family. And for me, I think that and the unrealistic expectation was one of the biggest eye-openers. And then also the role of the step-parent. If you go into this marriage and you know what your role is, then it's better. You're more equipped. And then also the discipline styles, different discipline styles, personalities, who is responsible for the discipline in the home, and then also communication and conflict skills, and then small little things like traditions, holidays, routines, and again, the finances is another, for some step families, that is also a big issue. So we do cover that, as well as step sibling rivalry. And then again, how to build that relationship with your stepchild. How do we let that thing take its time? And again, just maybe putting up house rules so that everyone knows, because we need to understand that the children are moving between homes. They don't enjoy this, but they've got in their other home where they've stayed for how many years, their own rules, and know what it's like. Now, I come in as a stepmom. Now the rules or the routine at home is changing. They don't know. So, and now I tend to expect them to know that they need to take the cup back to the kitchen after they've had a cup of coffee. But for them, they were so used to somebody else to come and clean it up. And if we don't communicate effectively, then that will cause tension. So we cover a lot of these in the workshops, as well as talking about the mom and the dad and how did you think this was going to be? How would you handle this? And just making them more aware and helping them to handle those situations. Because look, for stepfamily, there is a honeymoon. Definitely, there is a honeymoon. But take heart, it's only at the end of the journey.
And that's it does sound very comprehensive. What I'll do is I'm going to add all of your information in the description of this video. And we'll also edit in all of your email address and your website. So that's great. Elsje and I think what we need to do is we'll also have some discussion as to, on these various points that you've mentioned, discipline, building a relationship with the children, working on the marriage, those things. Those are all very crucial points that I think is families have to navigate through, and getting some info on all of that. So it'll be great if you can go and attend one of her workshops. And, if you know of somebody that you think might benefit from this, if you could also send her information to them, would be awesome. So Elsje, thank you very much for sharing your story. It's personal, it's close to your home, literally, and it is, and I have great appreciation for you doing that, and thanks for your heart towards step families. And I believe the Lord has called you for that, and He will definitely be using you. So it's wonderful, and thanks for coming on to Matters of the Soul. I'll also spend some more time and share with you guys on upcoming videos where me and Elsje will be talking about step families. So great stuff. All of the best, and please go and check out our. Thank you. Sorry, Elsje. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much for allowing me to share. To all the step families out there, keep heart, stay on your knees. Remember, the Lord never allows any challenge to cross your path that you aren't big enough or that's not too big for you to handle. Just stay close to Him. And just what I can share with you, if the approach that you've been using up until now hasn't been working, you've got nothing to lose by changing your perspective or changing your approach. Try something new. So keep faith, stay strong, and honor your marriage.
That's a big one. Yes, amen to that. And I think that's the key, is that the Lord will also never leave you nor forsake you. So to remember that you're not on your own. And so there will be a lot of other resources that I'll also link with the description. And Elsje, it's been great spending time with you. Thank you very much. And please go and visit YouTube, Matters of the Soul, and our Facebook page with the same name. Go and like and subscribe and click the bell so that you can get future videos and notifications. Thanks for spending time and with us and watching this video. God bless you. Goodbye.
Thanks, everyone. Be blessed.